Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. And as you can see by today's graphics, so this is a live stream, and this is a live stream campaign update. So this is my AD&D, or I should say our AD&D First Edition Greyhawk campaign. We are in Season 2, Session 26 and 27 as part of our recap. And I'm joined today by our elven cleric, Breeze, empty inside. So you can say hello there.
Hello, everyone. This is empty inside, or some call it mountainside. Either way, both are great.
That's where I started with. I thought it was mountainside. I was like, all right, mountainside. And they were like, no, it's MT and side. And they were like, think about it. And I was like, empty. All right, empty. All right, empty inside.
Yeah. That's right.
So
a vessel waiting to be filled.
Well, you've never said that before, so that actually makes a lot of sense. I could see that about your, the way that you play your character as well. So
exactly.
We have Leah coming in. Hello, Leah.
Hello.
Hello. How's it going? Yes, I just did the introduction, but welcome. So Sparrow is our half-elf druid, and a phenomenal player. Both Breeze and Sparrow are two very important characters in this group, and with such a large group, you would think that it's hard for players to have their characters kind of break out and be in that forefront from time to time. So it gets very easy to kind of get lost in the crowd, and that really doesn't happen very much in this group. Everyone seems to just step in and shine at various different parts of the adventures. That it really is a phenomenal thing.
And we have a very good diverse group of classes and races that really helps out with everybody being able to feel like an individual as well as part of the group.
All right. Oh, welcome, Mirador. So Mirador is our human cleric. So now we have our two clerics of the group. Plus, we have our druid. So right now
we've got our healing contingent.
Well, we just need our paladin. But
there we go. And then we'll have all our
pretty much. And Cedric does have his handy healing. Herbal healing, or whatever he does with whatever he does with salves and he has to get to you in one round and it can only handle the damage that you took in the immediate previous round. And only up to like 1 to 2 points, I think. But hey, you know what? That
stops the bleeding.
It stops the bleeding, exactly. It does stop the bleeding, so that's always useful. So yeah.
And he has a ring if you break your bones too, doesn't he?
Somebody
I think that's with the Amalric.
Yeah, Amalric has he has that ring that he was so desperate for it to actually cure wounds, and it was like, no, only bones, and just to throw that little curve in there, which I like to do. I like to you'll see that I like to break away from the tried and true sometimes, and just throw you a little curveball. So yes, you can heal broken bones. You can't heal anything else. And I know that came up because one of you took the falling damage might have came in handy with that too. So
yeah, we could have done that.
You could have done that. We didn't think of that at the time. So, or you guys didn't think of that at the time. Hey, wait a second. He fell down a pit and took 6 points of damage. Some of that's got to be bone bruises. So, and I would have allowed it too. I'll be like, hey, you know what? how much of this is
the funniest thing is when he asked, because you said, no, it'll only heal you if you break a bone in the injury. And he's like, so if I cut myself and then I break my bone, will it heal the cut? No. It heals the bone.
Yeah, it was it's sometimes you have to draw that line, and say, no, this is actually what it does. There's a reason it does that, and it just has to continue making sense. It's got to be consistent. So a bone golem isn't worried about healing cuts. A bone golem is worried about healing broken bones. So that's why that particular magic item only did what it did. So anyway, so I do, welcome everybody, and as others come in, I'll bring them in as well. We don't have anyone in the viewers yet, or at least commenting yet. So we'll go to our, we're just going to go along with our recap, and I'll invite you in, and we'll talk about the various parts of the adventure that you ran through, and we will also.
By the way, I know it was the last thing that happened, but I really liked my little pet.
Oh yes, you're and that's it's really cool because
you dirty rat.
We get it, and
no, I'm not dirty anymore.
Yeah, I'm gonna get into that that whole immersion, talk that I've been seeing a lot going on around, and I'm actually doing another live stream tomorrow night with a different group, not a different group of players, a different group of DMs called the Gatekeepers. And that's our topic of the night, is to talk about, immersion and how you go about creating various levels of immersion and what's the best ways of doing it, or if we don't want to go into the area of, oh, well, this is best and this may not be, we just like what works for you. And that's something that I tend to do when I talk as a DM. I never say this is how it should be done. I'll say this is how I do it, and I found it works for me. Hopefully it works for you too, but it may not, and that's perfectly fine as well. All right, so we'll bring Leah back in.
Sorry,
welcome back. No, it's fine.
Punched.
Yeah, hit the wrong button. So
Yep.
Just to bring any of the viewers up to speed, so we are currently, we just began B2, The Keep on the Borderlands, obviously written by Gary Gygax, and then it is homebrewed by me. And basically what I did was I removed the whole keep portion out of it, or you guys actually back in like week 4 encountered the keep for the first time. And now you're in week 26 and 27, and you're just now getting to the Caves of Chaos. So that's obviously not how the original module was written to be done, and that's because it's part of a campaign, and it's part of a campaign that has been largely driven by your actions through your characters and what your characters are pursuing and doing various things, and but we eventually get around to various parts, but sometimes you're just going to move beyond it, and I'll say, like, when I was looking at what I was planning for this week, last week, I started thinking to myself, I was like, how do I get them to go to B2 as a group of 8 4th level characters? It's not just a matter of, I'll just double the amount of everything that's in there, or I'll just throw a whole bunch of, random bad guys in there that you'll have to fight, to just be much more powerful. It's, I just have to create something that still makes sense. It's done there, the encounters that you'll have will be kind of smart, so your group is never going to face any opponent that's stupid. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you just never will. So even when and I was really happy with the fact that, yes, he did the Cobalt Layer in this past session, but the kobolds probably dealt more damage to your group across the board than some of the other more powerful groups that you fought in the past. You know what I'm saying? It's like they
nickel and dimed us.
Well, yes, they hit you more often than I think the other groups did as well. So they were just much more lucky against you, and they did use like a pack mentality, like they should. So it was like they, 5 of them would attack one person rather than one, where they'd have no chance of doing anything. So it worked out really well. But what I also wanted to intermix with our recap was a few questions, just in general, so that the people watching can kind of get an idea of, what they've heard me plenty of times talk about AD&D, first edition, and what I love about it. So I was just going to throw up this question here, and let's see what you all have to say about it. And then if people want to come in and chime in on these questions, they're certainly welcome to as well. So what is it like to be playing the advanced version of Dungeons & Dragons as Gary Gygax envisioned it? Now, the reason why I put that last part is kind of like a tongue-in-cheek, slightly trollish little jab that I'm putting out there, because there is some argument from certain corners of the YouTube community surrounding Dungeons & Dragons that later editions still support Gary Gygax's vision to the same level, if not greater than advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which I certainly disagree with. I think that they're more, so you see more of Gary's vision with advanced, first edition rather than others. But I'd rather hear from you all, like, what is it about AD&D that you're finding to be, appealing? So I'll just go across the board. So we'll start with Breeze.
What I love the most about first edition is the, it basically tore down all the walls. It said you could do whatever you wanted, and what I mainly noticed between it and later editions is the slow removal of action consequence. In first edition, basically, you had one shot and, one chance to do something. And if you succeeded, this happened. And if you failed, this happened. And then later on in other editions, there became more and more ways of essentially redoing, a kind of do-over. If you didn't like the results, you could try something else. So I really like that. I think that's what stands out the most to me in first edition.
Okay. Leah, I'll just go in order. Leah?
I can agree with the actions have consequences. I got into Dungeons and Dragons sort of when I was a kid. We used to play in the yard, and I was the one directing the rest of the people. I realize now I was a dungeon master for us. And Dungeons and Dragons gave me rule set to put myself into the story. And I used to hate the thing about some of the early modules were you never understood why that monster was there, but it was there and you had to fight it. And what I appreciate with you is you're trying to keep the ecosystem consistent, and that is the way I always played it. So I don't think I answered the question exactly, but I'll let you ask me again.
No. So it's with the ecosystem thing, and again, this is something that I really I've been inspired by this particular group to make those encounters make sense, and so as I was looking at the Dragon's Lair that you did in the last your last mini campaign, if you want to call it that, it was probably one of the first times that I was looking at it and I was saying, but wait a second, what does the Umber Hulk eat? And so I looked it up. I'm looking through all these things. So Umber Hulks eat Ankegs. That's why Ankegs was in there. All right. What else is going to be in this kind of environment? Well, we're going to have the, piercers, and we're going to have the shrieking mushrooms, and we're going to have bats, and we're going to have these, and I really started thinking that I want to make sure that the environment, is a believable environment. And so you weren't going to see anything that is just completely out of place. Welcome, Crandon.
Howdy.
I didn't want I wanted the environment to make sense. And I think that is really well supported by Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, because it puts you in that mindset as a DM that challenges are not just challenges of combat, but challenges are challenges of the mind. It's of knowledge, because as you were gaining knowledge of some of these creatures, like you're I know that you're going to remember some of these aspects of these creatures as you experience them, and you'll be able to, as your characters will be able to draw upon them. All right. And that you could really do, I find more so in AD&D than in D&D. All right. Or, 5th edition or any of the editions, or even the earlier editions. The earlier editions just weren't complex enough to really do that. So that's why I think AD&D first edition does it the best.
It really polished up a lot of the technical aspects of the original.
Yeah, and but it doesn't overburden it with so many rules that it really forces the DM and the players to be much more creative about the questions that they ask, and then the rulings that you make, and then you have to be very consistent with it.
And then if you're a DM with a group like this that constantly will ask the odd questions like, okay, wait a minute, how many feet of rope do we have? And how much rope does it need to tie around the neck of 17 different kobolds? I mean, you got to really be on your toes with this group, because, we are going to ask the odd question. We're going to ask the question you did not think of. You have to be on your toes all the time. I definitely give you props.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I forget it. It's like, I am getting a little bit older, so I don't always remember those things. But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing that where the party working together, and then the individuals within the party are becoming immersed in what's taking place. So let me get to Mirador, and then we'll finish up with Crandon on this question. So Mirador.
Well, very much along with what you said earlier. I think this edition has a good balance. Like, earlier editions were too simple, didn't have enough. But if you take later editions like Third and After, there's too many options. There's too much material, too many tools in your toolbox to choose from. This you have to, it's got just enough things to use, but then you have to also be able to be inventive with what you do have. It's not like you've got a tool for everything. You have to learn to use the tools you have.
Yes, and like I said, since there's not a rule for everything, players and the DM have to, kind of think outside that box. You have to be just much more creative and what you are doing as a group. I mean, every individual is always introducing something different, like the continual darkness on the marbles and then encasing them in mud, so that you're not just continuously throwing yourself in. They actually have to be broken, and the idea for Crandon to use those, and I'm going to let Crandon go off next, because Crandon actually played a major role in this whole devised plan. So I'll let Crandon do that recap there.
So I'm not 100% sure where we're at right now.
We're just well, actually, I'll let you handle the question that you see on the thing there. So what is it like to be playing in an advanced version of Dungeons and Dragons, as Gary Gygax envisioned it? So what's it like for you to play Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition as opposed to any other edition that you've played?
Okay, so I got to start my standard disclaimer. I played 5th edition exactly one time, and I walked away from it saying I will never touch that again. And just a little backstory there. My brand new first level party just had a walkthrough where we killed like 20 hobgoblins, 2 or 3 Etten, a hill giant, and a couple of other miscellaneous monsters. And we were just walking through at first level. It's like, I'm sorry, this is WoW.
Yeah.
It really is. This is what, and honestly, a comparison that I saw in a group, I think really pushes, later versions versus older versions home to me. It's like, it's the difference between DC and Marvel, if you follow comic books. And 5th edition is very much DC. You're a hero who happens to also be a player. And in Marvel, you're a player who also might end up being a hero if you don't screw up too much and die. I mean, so there's a much more real sense to it. And mainly I played 1st edition, 2nd edition a little bit. And honestly, when I play 2nd edition, I play 1st edition. I just let other people do all that other stuff. And that's honestly why I find 2nd edition tolerable, is because I can ignore all the changes.
Right.
I loved basic and BCMI back in the day, but again, I was 9, 10, 11, 12.
Yeah.
It had the proper complexity for that level, but this really allows people to be much more imaginative, much more try out various things and see how it works out. And from what I've heard of the later games, which, to be fair, I haven't played, as a rule for everything pretty much means you have no freedom. Because, if it's not in the rules, well, then it's not a thing you can do. Which, to me, what's the point?
Yeah.
Well, the later editions did create the rules lawyer, which I'm sure we can all appreciate.
Yeah. Well, there's some, to be fair, there are some rules lawyers today who look at the earlier versions and they believe that you're supposed to run the games strictly raw. Rules is written, and don't allow any, they'll actually deny that that Gary Gygax ever supported the idea of homebrewing, which is ridiculous because you could read it right there. I mean, it's like,
it seems strange that they would think that he meant to use everything when, from what I've heard, a lot of the stuff that got added was stuff that people ask questions about from the basic ones, and he's like, "Well, if
Mhm.
you really want me to make a rule instead of making your own, I will make one.
Right.
But
Mhm.
choose what you want to use because it's really your game."
Yeah.
Very
And
much.
it sounds
And
like
now,
he always felt that way.
and now I will say I am doing a Discord game that is as raw as you can be before until you run into the editorial glitches
Right.
where the books contradict themselves. But
Yeah.
I am doing a raw game, and it is kind of fun, but it does also point out some of the weak spots. It really in the editing. I don't think so much in the game itself, but some really weak spots in the editing and things that just don't really make sense.
Yeah. Well, I highly rely on on people, especially this player group here to, point out, hey, you know what? This is what it says, without having to dig through. And a lot of times, we're using having the spells on Roll20 and being able to just throw those up there so that we can really quickly see them. I mean, that really is a huge advantage. And it's a valuable tool. And it's much more real time, especially since you're doing it while you're casting your spell. And so then I can take a look at it really quickly and everything. It's a lot faster than just searching through it on in a book. So that's another positive. And I think some people might argue, well, that blows immersion because now you're looking at a virtual tabletop and you're looking for the little icon to click in order to attack, which we use, and or to cast your spell or whatever. And I really don't find that immersion breaking because we can multitask. You know what I'm saying? You can do a very mechanical thing and still have the imagination to still put yourself in your character's shoes, and
yeah.
do both things at the same time.
That would be no different than saying someone saying this right here distracts you from the immersion of your game, because you have to have a device that has the buttons on it to perform your commands.
Right.
You could still get just as immersed into your video game as anybody else by having this in your hand.
Oh, I can swear to that. I mean, I can't tell you the number of
somebody could also say, oh, well, the dice causes you to get out of your play because they are dictating what you do or something like that.
Yeah, no, it's a I can't tell you the number of times that I was playing a game on Sony PlayStation and my mother had to throw something at me to get my attention. You know what I'm saying? It's like, computer games, you get immersed in computer games. There you definitely get that tunnel vision, like Empty Inside was putting out there. Yeah, you definitely get that tunnel vision, but we're also younger. You know what I'm saying? So it's a little bit, different if and
I've learned a few things over the years. For example, I'm not gonna. I mean, I remember many years ago playing Resident Evil for the very first time. Got the game late at night. Went over to a friend's house. We were staying up past our bedtime, so we were already like, "Oh my god, we gotta be quiet." And we're playing Resident Evil for the very first time, and when those monsters jumped out, and everybody knows the moment I'm talking about, we went through the roof.
When the dogs jumped through the window, all right,
yep.
Just made you scream. I was just thinking because I've been playing Skyrim and Daggerfall. The first time that I heard the lightning go, the thunder, that crack of lightning, I literally fell out of my chair. I jumped so high that I fell out of my chair, because I had the headset on, and all of a sudden, and I was like, it was the most startling thing I've ever experienced. And again, that's the kind of immersion that you get from something that's audio and visual. All right, and you can still create that at your table, even if you're virtual like we are. You could still create that at your table, probably a little bit more so in person than you can, but those other little side things really don't distract from that. They don't take away from that. So if you're using Roll20 or you're using Discord and you're rolling physical dice and you're doing the the electronic dice, you're not splitting away your immersion all that much by doing various tasks at once. So I don't see that argument really playing out that well. So let's see. Let's get back to. So let's talk about our recap a little bit. So the party has this was session 27, so it's our 27th weekly session, and you started Keep on the Borderlands, and I already spoke very early on about the fact that as a DM, I was like a little bit like nervous. I was like wondering whether or not I would run the Keep on the Borderlands, because your party of 8 is your party of 8 are all 4th level. Crandon might be 5th or 5th. Yeah, Crandon is 5th. The thief is 5th or close to 5th.
He's 6th. He's 6th actually, I think now.
No, he's ready for 6th, but I don't think he's quite there.
And
yeah.
so is the Druid. She's ready for 6 too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah. So you're about to cross
I'm a couple
over.
fights away myself. We're all getting pretty close.
Yeah, you're all getting pretty close to 5th and and 6th level, and Keep on the Borderlands is really an adventure module that's 1 to 3. So but I didn't want to make it where it's like, all right, I'll just double the number of creatures you're going to fight, or I'll add some different things in there that weren't just simply weren't don't make sense to be there. So I made it very much a part of the campaign that you're currently on, but it is going to be different. And like I said, you did the Cobalt Layer, and the Cobalt Layer was challenging to the point that were any of you going to die? Probably not. You'd have to have some really, really unlucky rolls, but virtually every one of you
did have some unlucky rolls.
Yeah, you did, and and a number of you still got injured, which I was, I wasn't like, oh great, they're starting to take damage here, but it was a good reminder that even
I was glad your trap didn't have spikes on the ground.
Yeah, it's it is a good reminder that no matter how powerful, and your characters aren't like individually powerful, but no matter how powerful your group is, that these other usually minor creatures or monsters that you're facing, if they're played smartly, will still pose a challenge. So
it was also a good reminder to this group that no matter how many times we say, all right, we're checking for traps, we need to keep saying it, because the one time we know.
Yeah.
Well, so the interesting thing there is Crandon honestly was not checking for traps at that point because he thought it was too early for any traps.
Yeah.
Literally, that was the determination I made. It's like, well, let's get some speed on and get through this first one. Before we reach where it ratchets up in difficulty, and he guessed wrong.
Yeah, and well, what was it? Really shocking was the fact that
nobody tripped it. That was the thing.
Nobody. Well, no.
Well, one person did.
Angus, the last
one person
crossing over it was the only person to actually trip the trap, and I was like, all right, that's pretty cool. That it did at least, one of you at least fell through it, so as that reminder, hey, you kind of have to be careful, adventuring. And then
it was totally correct for kobolds because they're known for setting traps.
Right. Mm-hmm. and I actually played that, into the description of the of that little alcove that they were in, that there was a trigger there. There really wasn't, but I wanted to create the sense that, it was the kobolds that were lying in wait and waited till that last person up, and, pull that trigger.
And then they attacked the ones in the center.
In the center, right.
Where our strongest fighters were at the beginning.
Yeah, the beginning and the end. And the, and again, the other thing that I do as a DM is, and I think this is really important if anyone else is watching that's DMing a large group. Large groups have both advantages and disadvantages. And one of those disadvantages is that they don't have that freedom of movement that a smaller group would have. And that's why I wouldn't let the next rank of players necessarily, get into that fight, because it just wouldn't make sense. What are they going to do? They're going to reach over. If you were in a formation, and you were using that formation to work that way, like you had the mid-range weapons in the middle and then your archers at the rear, but you had that expanse, then the archers could freely shoot without hitting anybody directly in front of them, which you guys don't have a great track record of doing anyway. You know what I'm saying? You should, avoid shooting, any kind of missile fire.
I've hit the party twice, if not 3 times.
Yeah, it's like, but it becomes a mental challenge to keep on remembering, how does a large group move through a dungeon crawl, and that large group size becomes a disadvantage. And you will
just
always,
for the record,
that.
I've only shot one party member, and it was the dwarf. And yes. I think we can all agree dwarves are often overlooked.
Yes, yes, you definitely made him part of the action. Like,
shoot one, lose 3.
Yes. So,
but I'm just saying. I mean, he's the only party member, and him being a party member is really kind of a gray area.
Yeah. So, so you guys go through the Cobalt Layer, and in the, some of the things that you started doing was you used all the tricks in your book that you remembered, and you started, what I really like, my favorite part of it was when you got to that very classic dilemma of you went into the common room of the kobolds, you put half of them to sleep. Most of them were the males that would have been fighters. And so all you were left with was, a majority of the females and the offspring, the kobold children, or whatever you call them.
Pups.
Ups. Is that what they're called? Ups.
Pups.
Yeah. Pups. Yeah, you're right. Pups. So, so you had those, and you do have a paladin in the group, and he walked away and knew that your party would do what it needs to do, and he could both justify it, and then still say, but I don't need to take part in it. And that to me is a way, because kobolds are inherently evil, and by design of their creator, and I stick to that philosophy of the characters. If you're going to or of the monster races that you're going to encounter, if I were to use a good version of a hobgoblin or a kobold or something like that, it would be just for a very limited story, plot device, and then that individual creature would fade away, into something else. You wouldn't have to deal with them beyond that point. And it would just be such a rare thing. So that's a unique character, that would have a very specific purpose. And that's why I like to create that sense of, and that dilemma, because you all felt that dilemma of, what do we actually do with these, at this point. And so
I didn't have a dilemma.
no, I know you and Angus didn't have a dilemma, so neither of you had a dilemma. You were like, okay. And
neither did Crandon. He just didn't want to turn visible.
Yeah, that's right. Crandon couldn't take part because he was invisible at the time, and he didn't want to break his invisibility. So
Cedric in the chat panel asked me about the kobolds, and I said, if we are going to take them as prisoners, we would have to, take them all as prisoners, and then we would have to guard them, etc. But without being able to really devote ourselves to that, we need to just do what needs to be done, and that was to slit their throats.
Yeah, they would have been a logistical nightmare. You dispatched them.
There were a lot of them.
Yeah, there was, it would have been a logistical nightmare. You dispatched them in as, humanely as possible. And
that brings to a tactical thing that we did on this, is that we did decide to go ahead and use 2 sleep spells on this group. And I think that was a wise choice, because afterward Angus said, well, don't worry, you can just put them in front of me and I'll mow them down. But if we'd actually had to fight 40 melee attackers, eventually they're going to roll 15 or above a few times. We would have been pretty beat up.
Yes.
If we had to fight 40 of them.
Yes, and I was actually quite surprised that you took as many sleep spells as you did, because I was expecting you, your group of thinking, well, we may not, we're getting powerful. We're a large group. We may not actually, the DM might not throw these little things at us anymore. And again, the 2 magic users spoke about that, and they said, yeah, but wait a second, this is the Caves of Chaos. We know that we've encountered, some of the denizens of them scattered throughout the wilderness and everything. There's still going to be orcs and kobolds and those other lower things. And so both magic users actually did take sleep spells. So that, so that certainly worked in your advantage. It goes back to that, it goes back to that experience that this group of players actually has. So, yes, hello, Nordic Maelstrom, and yes, TSR Dungeons and Dragons is the best Dungeons and Dragons that there's out there. I will. That's not even going out on a limb. I think that's without question. It is the best versions, whether you like the basic or you like the advanced. But either are the best. Yes, and I have the same cover too. So, yeah, advanced for
Gary
advanced players. That's
Gary Gygax.
The player's handbook should say advanced player's handbook. That's my only quibble over it.
But I do love how Gary Gygax's name is front and center, as if it's part of the title.
Oh yes. That's the other thing, is that it is prominently on there. All right, so let's say, yes, hello, Nordic. I don't think it's going out on a limb either. I like the basics in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Yes, it is. I don't think it's going out on a limb either. And I will, die saying that it's still the best versions of the game that Gary Gygax created. that I've encountered, and I have played modern Dungeons and Dragons, so I played 5th edition, and it's not a comparison. I didn't play 3rd or 4th, although I've read them a bit, and I have played second edition, and I still prefer AD&D 1st edition. So let's see. Let's get to our next banner. So here's a little exercise I wanted to do, and so this is what has been your favorite interaction with another player character up to this point. So we'll go in that order again. So we'll start with Empty Inside. So what is your favorite interaction with another player character?
I knew this was coming, and I'm still trying to think of what a good answer. Because for me, it's been the encompass of everything, and I know that's kind of a cop-out answer, but because of the way that I'm playing my character, I'm playing a very self-motivated character. So basically, any and every interaction that he has had with the other player characters, he's, at least in his mind, he's been the center of the focus of that conversation. So to him, they're all the same because they all involved him, and that was good. But I'm not going to it as the cop-out answer. I'm really going to it from the perspective of my character. All the interactions have been great. And he has enjoyed each person for their diversity, and he will go to different people for different things. Like when he was whispering with Angus about, let's do it, the different ways that we could kill him. I mean, why not? He wouldn't go to the Paladin with that. Oh,
yeah.
So I would have to say it's been pretty equal for me, but I could definitely enjoying it from that perspective. It's kind of a unique character for me to be playing. So
cool. All right. That's a fair enough answer. I mean, it's your character, the way that your character, the way I see your character is that you're one of the first characters that was looking to well, actually, both clerics, have done this as well. So both you and Mirador have done this, in the past. Is what does the party need, in this moment, and especially with heals and things like that, So that's that's an element that I think has stood out for me about both of your characters as well, and in general, the whole party has worked really well together. And so, but yeah, I think that in that particular instance, you and Angus were the only two having that kind of conversation. Listen, we know we need to do this, right? And Cedric also was thinking more analytically about it, like the logistics and everything, and Candrius knew exactly what he was going to do. So he was very deliberate. He says, I'm going to walk away and I'm going to justify, and he justified it, and it just made sense for his character as well. So, I think it, in that particular instance, it worked really well, and your interactions were spot on for that particular situation. So, Mirador, we'll go to you next with same question.
Well, I guess the one that have had the most interactions with would be Crandon. There's been a couple of times when he's had some close calls where I had to either heal him or knock him out of the way or pick him up off the floor from some close scrapes. So I think we've had more interactions together than I guess with anybody else.
I'm really happy to say that the party became more fighter happy, or more fighter heavy rather.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because at the beginning, when he was trying to do the second string fighter thing, it was not ideal.
Yeah, no, it was, and really the one instance where that stood out for me was when Mirador was being attacked by an orc, but he saw Crandon take that scimitar hit to the gut that put him down, and you at the time said, "I'm going to ignore the attack that's coming at me, and I'm going to get to him," and so that was the kind of thing that was like one of the earliest times that I started picking up that, hey, this group is really starting to click. Because what was that? That was maybe the third session.
Yeah.
Had to have been the fourth or fifth.
Oh no, fourth.
Yeah,
fourth or fifth session. You're right. That was because that was after you guys had come on. That was in that storage room in Questcatan.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is a party, even with 4 new members coming in at the time, and it was already clicking. It was just coming together, very quickly. So let's go to Leah now. So your first or your favorite interaction with another player character.
I think Cedric, the magic user, having the background of growing up in a town that was Druid heavy, and his whole focus is because of his background. He keeps looking to me as a spiritual leader because I'm the Druid. And while I find that annoying at some points, why are you asking me this? But it still goes back to my character, and my character, especially in the beginning, was questioning why I was with this party. I am an agent of the balance of nature. And obviously,
I'm sure quite a few knights are still asking that question.
Yeah. But I once we got into the conflict with the Dark Druid, I have no problem. He is my focus because his type of druidism is wrong. And I feel that very strongly, and this party will find him again.
Yep. It should happen. At some point. Yeah. So
it may happen the next time we're together. You never know.
Yeah, and with Cedric, I mean, an interesting point that you bring up is that Cedric's character is a magic user, but his stated religion is a druidic religion. So, it's like he's looking at it from just a spiritual, awakening in him, and then he's seeing you as a, you're a true druid. You're, professionally, you're a druid. Trained in what he only feels at a spiritual level. You're feeling it at a much different level. Yeah, you're actually living it. You were born to it, and you have the ability to draw upon that knowledge and actually bend nature to work with you in doing what you're doing.
One of the things I've really appreciated was I can bring my knowledge of the monsters that I have dealt with over the years in, and it's my druidic knowledge. Well, of course I know what an Umber Hulk is, and of course I know that they eat Ankeg, and of course I understand, that an Otiug is part of the ecosystem to clean up the dungeon. But what I didn't remember was that Otiugs were telepathic.
Yeah.
So, that was a learning experience for my character.
Yeah,
I knew what it was, but I didn't know all of the details.
Yeah, well, that's a reflection of youth, actually. So you're a low level druid. You're only a druid of the third circle.
Third circle.
You know, third circle at this point. So, and as your party encounters more and more, you know, I'm sure that, you know, I'm keeping track of the different things that you've encountered, so that even if the player forgets, I will give the characters a chance to remember some of the things that, you know, us players might have forgotten, you know. And so it does become part of your character's growth, you know, moving through these campaigns. So
The adventure
last but not
lexicon.
least, yes. So Crandon, same question for you.
So I'm going to basically say exactly what Empty Inside said. I mean, to me, the defining feature of this group is that it works well together as a group. Maybe not so much in town and all that, but when we start getting into the tactical stuff, it's like everybody kind of knows their role.
Yeah,
and moves into it really smoothly.
Yes. Now I
And
will
even
say. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, and even among those who are the same class, like Breeze is more of a fighter / backup healer, and I'm more of the spell. You know, I usually don't fight as much as I cast, so we that way we always have something in reserve, because he's better at fighting than I am, so he does that more often, and I use my spells and fight as a backup, so we always have something in reserve.
And we see the same. We see the same thing in the mages. It's like, oh, it's a 60 by 30 room. Well, my sleep spell's going left. My sleep spell's going right.
Yeah. There's coordination, you know, or synergy that's taking place between the characters. The one thing I will say about the way that you're playing Crandon, that really stands out to me is that you're more of the point man kind of thief, and you rely on those skills. Like I get less of a greed as a motivation for your character. Your character is much more the
more
dungeoneering
scout, less
type.
burglar.
More scout, less burglar, or just, you know, very comfortable to get into a fight. You know, very, you know, you're okay with being up at the front, and you're more like Empty Inside said, more of a scout kind of model, and it's really a mentality, because there's no, you know, this is still AD&D first edition, so you don't have subclasses and all of that stuff,
or a thieves handbook from the second edition. This is
or the thieves handbook for the second edition. We're just using, you know, first edition stuff, and you're, you know, and that all comes from, and that's something else that that people not familiar with AD&D first edition, because there's not as much in the character sheet. The players create that different version of their character class and race combination,
by how they act.
By how they act, and their choices of those other things. Like Candrius chose as a paladin to start off with just a spear, you know, and you wouldn't normally think of a paladin using a spear.
Maybe a lance, but not a spear.
You know, it's like there's just choices. I mean, Angus, the originally a ranger, it made sense that he was going to focus on a bow as a ranger. You know, being a wilderness survivalist and that kind of a thing. But you know, he could have gone with any kind of a weapon, you know, combination. It's like a lot of times, if you wanted to differentiate between fighter A and fighter B, you know, was the armor that they chose. I've always respected players that were playing fighters that says, but I'm more of a, you know, a wilderness kind of, you know, ranging around. I'm going to opt to wear light armor, whether it be leather or fur or maybe studded leather armor, and avoid wearing chainmail or plate mail or other banded or anything that was much heavier types of armor, because I want to be that swift mover. Maybe I'm a dexterity focused fighter over a strength, and so I'm going to play it that way. So AD&D first edition actually creates more of a circumstance for role playing. Yeah, no problem. I think it creates more of a circumstance of role playing than a later edition where it puts all of that on your character sheet, and so you're playing your character sheet and not playing your character.
Right.
And I think that's a major difference.
In the later editions, it's almost like, the way I saw it, I mean, they gave you those roles to play. So you were role playing because you were playing those roles. But where it differed from first edition, what we're playing here now, is it basically said, all right, you're a thief, you can do these things, but you could choose your own role. You could be the scout one day and the burglar the next day, and you weren't pigeonholed into playing this role. Your role is whatever you play it. It's kind of like how I said before, how yes, my character is a cleric, but he always seems to have these really sadistic thoughts, and or chalk things, an accidental shooting of a dwarf, chalk it up of, oh no, that was a mercy kill. Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, he may not always act like a cleric, and somebody once said to me, well, that's not a very lawful thing to do, and I'm like, well, your alignment isn't based on what your character is. It's what your character does. So if you could play a lawful good character, and if you do too many bad things, that alignment changes. Your alignment changes to reflect the character. The character doesn't change to reflect the alignment.
But no, and like in Crandon's case, I mean, so the scout role was very intentional. So when we started out, we were fighter poor for the first couple of sessions, and so he kind of did the, well, a thief can kind of fight thing, and it didn't work out terribly well for him, but he kind of did the thief can kind of fight because that's what the party needed, and then he moved into the scout role. Now it's interesting. So I've played the greed thief before. To me, the trick with the greed thief is you've got to really know your party well.
Yeah.
Because people can take it really poorly. So it's like I made the joke about, oh, this is paste, and here, let me throw it away for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you do that for real a couple of times to the party, unless they're people you've known for several years,
you
tend to not be terribly cool with that.
Yeah.
I don't think that would have gone over well with that dwarf that we had at the early in the session. He would have taken offense to you doing that.
Yeah.
I can't believe you did that, you toon.
Yeah. So I have here. So playing this in the day, I wanted to play a paladin, but did not get the roles. So the ranger would wear heavy armor and act as a paladin. Yeah. I mean, you could always pretend that you're a paladin even though you're a ranger. It's kind of hard to get the ranger roles too. So
that would be kind of cool. That would be like a
but you don't need the evil 17,
thing, right?
Yeah. You don't need the evil 17. That's the difference.
Yeah, that's the big difference. Is you don't need that. You need overall. Was it 3?
I think at least
3,
either
14s
15
or
or
better.
16s.
Yeah. So it's quite a bit to make a ranger, but sometimes pretending you're a different role, and saying, well, I really can't play this, but I can do it through this other class, and just try to play that way. So kind of like Crandon could be a frontline fighter if he wanted to. He's not best suited for doing that, but he could certainly play his character like that. And and like I said, to a certain extent, he plays the point man, so he is putting himself out there in a fairly dangerous position. Let's see what
What
else we
I
got here.
what I was thinking of was Crandon's out there at the front. If we really got into a nasty fight, he's still invisible. He's ready to come back and give that nasty, blow from behind that a thief is best suited for.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And actually, Crandon was taking the early on role of being the one to finish off sleeping foes and things like that. So he
would have done it this session too, but he wasn't given up visibility for anything.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
Yeah, so it's always good to have that, a few characters that are willing to do what needs to get done. I mean, I used to play that as my character was almost always that character, almost always, almost like the Expanse, right? When Amos says, I'm that guy, yeah, my character was always that guy. It was like, I'll do it, no problem, So Nordic Maelstrom says that the last Paladin I played was given a lot of flack because he wielded a scimitar. His deity's favorite weapon is a scimitar. To me, clerics and paladins should always use the weapon that is the favorite weapon of their deity. Now they might not, they at least have to have the proficiency of it. I'll qualify that, but that should be a requirement, and that just totally makes sense to me. If you're a Breeze is like that. Breeze's deity, her choice of primary weapon is the longbow, and that's why Breeze as a cleric uses a longbow. Another cleric, Mirador, could not use a bow. All right, based on his deity and who he follows. So those are things that as a DM, because it makes sense, you should include it. Now that's straight up second edition. I think that's when that's introduced, deities, unless it's it's definitely second edition that they introduce deity specific weapons.
And they even go a bit farther than that. They have like
spells.
deity specific spheres and spells, so that kind of makes it even more restrictive in some ways.
But I think much more interesting as well to have those kinds of things, because it becomes something where you start to develop your character based on adhering to those domains. And when I impose those kinds of things like on clerics, and I said, no, you actually, it's not just, I went home and I prayed tonight to have my spells. If we were playing that kind of a campaign, I would be like, no, you actually have to commit an act that matches your deity's, domain, so that's what you're really supposed to be doing in order to go, it's not just simply, I prayed and now I have this. No, it's like if your god is a god of the sun, well, you have to see sunlight, each day in order to replenish your thing. So if you're in the Underdark, listen, you're screwed. You're going to have 1 day's worth of spells, and then you're no longer going to have access unless you have some kind of a device that is going to allow you to see the sun, and probably not Cedric's crow won't be able to fly, far enough and high enough to do that. Let's see what else we got here. He came from a land called Qadira, an Arabian Middle Eastern land, left right to the So there's so whatever your setting kind of sets up makes sense. So let's see, the Gibsons. Rogue sounds like a stand-up guy. Yes, all of my players are stand-up people. Every single one of them. I really am blessed with a large group of experienced and, just great players that just get along and work together, and it just really does make my job easier as a and really encourages me to look to the next session, and be prepared and think of interesting ways to keep them engaged. So yes, the rogue and everyone else are definitely stand-up guys. Always used to have issues with our party rogue trying to steal from the party or getting caught stealing in towns, etc.
And that's what I was saying about,
Yeah.
I played the Greed Thief, but you really have to have a tight group
Yeah,
to do that.
yeah. And the other thing that I used to do was, and I actually did this in my D&D campaign with the one thief character, was the Thieves Guild kept on tasking her. Oh, let me get empty back in. The Thieves Guild kept on tasking her to bring back, a certain item or a certain amount that she would have to skim off the top, in many cases in order to do that. But the group was somewhat understanding of the fact that this was something that because they suspected it was happening, but they didn't quite know for sure. But they attributed it to the fact that, well, yes, she does have to answer to her guild, and they didn't always know, like, every single character in that and player in that campaign were getting very individualized little pieces of information, and then they could decide whether or not they were going to share it, and they were getting separate tasks in many cases. And in that particular campaign, there was one character in that group who didn't speak the same language as the other 5 in the group. She could only interact with one other character in the group, and I didn't allow them to interact directly with her. What I'm saying? So she always had to rely on that other player to interact with the rest of the party. It was one of the first times that I did like regional languages, and she just happened not to. She could only converse with the halfling, because the halfling, she had halfling as a secondary language, and so that was the only way that she could converse, with him. And there was no elf in the group, so no one else had the halfling, language. So it worked out really well. So let's see. Yes, they're all,
Thank you.
as I say, very experienced players, great group of people that just, they focus on that group dynamic of just getting the job done as cautiously but efficiently, and they look out for each other, which I think is the best quality of them, is that they're working together to make sure that they accomplish the goals that they have. My motto was do what you got to do, away with the party, that's fine, but you don't steal from the hand that feeds you. Yeah, that's
one thing I always incorporated, kind of what Gibson said earlier about always worrying about the party thief stealing from the party. The way, my original campaign setting, as I mentioned, as Richard knows, I used to be in love with the Dragonlance, and of course in Dragonlance you have the Kender, and we kind of touched on this on last night's game session. Some people were talking about Kender, and I was smiling as I was listening at work. And I wanted to comment then, but I was too busy. But I love Kender. I love to play Kender. And the way I always use that, because of their quote unquote kleptomania, what do you do about your party? Who, stealing from your party? And I always put it up. I always chalked it up this way: is that the Kender steal, and when they steal, they don't see it as stealing because what they're doing isn't wrong. But I always played my Kender that knew that taking from friends was wrong, and therefore, that prevented them from stealing from the party, but not from everybody else. Because so that's something I've always incorporated in all my thieves as far as the party goes. Stealing from my friends is wrong, but everybody else is fair game.
Yep.
Well, if somebody leaves something on the ground, of course you have no problem picking it up. But if if it's in their pack, you're not going to pick it up.
Right. Unless, of course, there's some sort of outside motivating force that steers the character into thinking this isn't wrong to take. If you had like an intelligent item like the Lord of the Rings ring that's calling to everybody in the party, everybody desires to possess it. Well, at that point, that whole taking it is wrong is out the window because you have the outside influence.
Yeah.
Let me just welcome Shadow and Sun. And what did you miss? Well, you missed. We've been talking about my party's adventure or beginning adventure into the Caves of Chaos. So we're kind of playing a very modified Keep on the Borderlands scenario. I'll call it that. It's not the direct module, and so they're just talking about how the party has really come together, how the party works together. What is it about AD&D first edition that they find most compelling? Let's put it that way. And and you'll certainly be able to catch back up on the first hour or so of our talk. Let's get back to our banners and see. So we've each shared a little bit about each other's characters and what they, their favorite moment with another player character. So not just, from the perspective of their own player character, but what do they think about the other player characters and how have they kind of formed a bond or just a favorite moment with each. So let me get to this last part, or at least the last of the question parts that I was going to talk about. So as your party move on to the next level band, so you're going to be in that 4 to 7, 5 to 9 level band very shortly. Certainly after the Keep on the Borderlands, you're going to be in that band there, and we're going to enter session or season 3 of the campaign. And what do you expect to see in the near future for your characters? So the order's actually changed, so I'll go with the Mirador.
Well, I guess in the next level band, he'll be learning new things, expanding. Be able to get. I think we'll probably be able to get another weapon proficiency, some non-weapon proficiencies, and some new spells. It'll be nice. I think in the next level band, I'll be able to get a larger heal, which is important because we're getting to the point where our Cure Light Wounds doesn't go very far. And I think it takes. I don't think you get the next heal until 4th level.
It's a good thing we have 6 or 7 of them a day between us.
Right. So, and we have 3 healers, so plus the paladins, so we're okay. But yeah, it'll be nice to get a little bit more, and then I was mentioning this to somebody last night after the session, is I gonna have to try to figure out what language I want to learn, because I've got some that item that I got, the ring that lets me, do a suggestion or charm. Those things are only useful if you know the language of the person you want to speak to.
That's true.
And I've had so many opportunities where I wanted to use it, But I didn't know the languages of any of the things that we were confronting, so
Right.
I may have to see what I can do about learning some new languages.
Yes, and I've included kind of like a system of, how you go about that when you're in town and you're, part of your training. You can pick up those additional languages, and then based on the rarity of the language, that'll just increase your cost, or it might take a little bit longer in order to pick them up, maybe a little bit harder to actually learn them, but for the most part, yeah, that's a next step in everyone's progression, actually, that has less to do with adventuring per se and more to do with your interaction with the world, and so that's going to be a very important change, going into this next level band as well. Now, for anybody that's just familiar with 5th edition, 4 to 7 or 5 to 9 is a very difficult level band. For you start encountering some things like you're not as powerful in AD&D 1st edition at 5 to 9 or 4 to 7, 5 to 9 as you are in 5th edition. 5th edition 9, I mean, you're talking Critical Roles group is, they're all level 9 or maybe even at some point 12, which is ridiculously powerful compared to
Solo dragons.
AD&D. Yeah, they're ridiculously powerful. But yeah, 4
I'll
to
be
7
taking on vampires. We would be running if we saw a vampire. There's no way.
Yeah. In 1st edition vampires, they level drain, and that level drain is permanent. Or unless you get a restoration spell, which is a very high level spell too. So it's
Vampire isn't even on my list of turn undead yet, let alone a reasonable roll.
We're not turning them.
No,
they're turning us.
Yeah. I'm just saying. I mean, it's those familiar with 1st edition, it'll appear on there, and it'll be like a 20 that you got to roll to turn it, and as you level up, your chance increases. It's not even in the next 1 or 2 before it appears on my list.
Yeah,
we can wait.
Actually, the scariest of those things are ghosts, because they age you, and if they kill you from age, there's no resurrection from that. Because when they bring you back to life, you're still above your above your life expectancy, and you die immediately. So it's like level drains or aging or anything like that in 1st edition is a really scary process, and or prospect, I should say. And especially the aging is, I mean, if you're an elf, fine, but for the most part, it's aging.
If you're a human, you're like, nope.
Yeah, no, I'm not dealing with that. It's so I think we went with Mirador. So Crandon, what do you see in the future of your character, or hope to see, I should say?
So he really wants to start doing some traditional thieving stuff, maybe joining the Thieves Guild, doing some missions that are more strong. So we've had stealth in our missions, but so far we kill stuff.
Yes, yeah. So you want to get those.
He wants to get some of that finesse. Yeah.
All right. So that's something, next time you're in town, you see, and that's the other thing. Like I said, like you've been an adventuring thief, more like a scout than a more traditional thief character. So once you start falling into that role, and then that's where we come with downtime kind of things, which we're slowly integrating and making it just much more in depth, is your time while you're training. And so, yeah, that's certainly going to come up. So you're certainly going to, especially in Westburn, because they know that you're they know that you're in this party. They know that you're the thief of this party, and so does the Thieves Guild. So eventually they're going to reach out and say, hey, wait a second, we haven't, been formally introduced yet.
Well, I mean, so the good thing is I'm assuming my trainer
yes
is a member in good standing, so it's not like I'm thumbing my nose at him, at least.
Right. Yeah, they certainly know of you, but you haven't actually worked directly for them.
Yeah.
And so that's something, that's something as a group, that we might actually decide. Like I was initially doing that, where I was pairing you up for certain side quests, and you actually experience some of those. And so that might be something that I do, as far as doing little side quests or like solo quests, or things just very, very specific to each of you, and then or pairs of you. And that way, we can address some of those things as well, especially now that there's 8 of you. It'll be very easy to pair you up and have you do things like that. So going down, so empty inside, Breeze.
Let me sure I'm on here. Yeah, okay. Well, the short answer to that question would have to be Elven Chainmail. I expect to see that at some point in my character's future. That would be really nice. Now, I would say one thing that I'm looking forward to is being one of the clerics in the group is, with D&D, with level progression, and not to say any class becomes boring or anything like that. I don't mean that, but like the fighter just becomes a better fighter. A lot more success in their attacks. But then again, the difficulty of the mission also increases, so to keep them at a balance. But what I've always loved about like the clerics or the magic users is they start to delve into these new spells and new ways of being able to protect their group as a cleric, or detect things as a druid, or attack as a magic user. So we already have great diversity of tools in our toolbox with this group, but as the levels increase over the next couple of levels, we're really going to get into some really fun and interesting spells that are going to be a really interesting combination as to how we use them. Like the mage casts this spell, and then the cleric casts this spell on top of it, and then the druid does this. We could end up creating a whole new lasagna spell that could just be insane.
Yes. And finally, Leah, if you want to.
Okay, well,
with that.
My deity is a elven deity of avians. So what I'm looking forward to is wild shape and learning avian, the language, so that I can speak to other birds when I am in bird form. And I will be doing more birds than any other animal, but I will not exclusively do them. I look forward to being able to become like a strong animal to, an auroch to hit somebody with my horns, or an owlbear and slice them with my claws. There are animals that I will be able to channel in wild shape that I'm looking forward to, and it's been the main reason I wanted to play a druid.
Yeah. We got Ivan's coming on.
Hey.
Hello, Ivan. Ivan is Cedric, our magic user.
So now he gets to play catch up and answer all the questions.
Oh my gosh.
So far.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't hear him yet, so he's probably still in the process of logging in. So let's see. So
and luckily
expectations.
he gets to answer those questions without hearing all our answers, so he has no idea about all the bad
Yeah.
things we said about the
Yeah.
magic user all.
Yeah.
He knows.
I believe I just heard you for a moment, Cedric. I think he's driving, so it might be hard.
Oh yeah. He said. He
Yeah, he said he was going to be driving. So yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, Cedric. So
It doesn't work for me to be on, and it doesn't work.
yeah, no, it's
about
breaking
that.
up, quite a bit. So
Okay.
but hey, I know you're traveling, so that's fine. We'll catch you the next time.
Okay. All right. Till next time. Bye.
Okay. So let's see. Anything else from our comments? How to test the metal of a character: stick the level drainer or stat drainer in front of them. Yes.
No, bad idea.
Or just throw them those curveballs. I mean, you throw them something that they think they know what they're looking at, and just change it up. You could always introduce something that is a lesser version of it or a
like
greater
that bone
version of it.
golem that we had.
Yeah,
but
like the bone.
I don't think we saw that coming necessarily.
Yeah,
We didn't see the bone golem coming.
No, you didn't see the bone golem coming, and you're, I kind of really built that up to be a leash, and you were like, how are you actually throwing a leash at a party of of second level characters, and so it certainly did work well in convincing you that this was what it was, and everybody surrounding it thought that that's what it was, and so it really played out well in doing that. And it's true, it still wasn't even truly a bone golem either. It was really a construct, because your party wouldn't have been able to handle a true bone golem. You wouldn't have been able to damage it that well either. Yes, you certainly in first edition, it's usually best to learn when to stand and fight, when to run, and when to try to talk your way out of it. And those are the three survival instincts
Like the
that
gambler.
If you run away, you
Yeah.
just die tired.
sometimes you should run away. Sometimes that's the only option, and just hope that you only have to run faster than a dwarf. All right, so that's
well, first need to know how to slit an Achilles tendon on one of these big people, and then it's all gravy.
Yeah. Well, you see with Crandon, he's always on the point, so he is actually the furthest to run away, and he has the shortest legs, so it's harder for him. But he is dexterous, so he can probably weave past the first rank of people.
Not if I trip him.
He'll run right under your foot.
Okay, so anyway, so finishing up our recap very quickly. So you basically fought your way through the Cobalt Layer. You realized that the hobgoblins of the area were actually mistreating the kobolds, which is no real surprise. You managed to kill a couple of hobgoblins, and then to finish it off, like at the very, very end, you ended up Sparrow ended up befriending a giant rat, and so
It's my new pet.
Yes, it's your new pet, and so you'll have this giant rat.
And Cedric got to play with his new toy and remove any diseases that might have been on the rat.
Yes. So he utilized his one of his items, or his new item, to remove disease, and so now the rat is no longer diseased, and you're able to speak using your speak with animals spell. You're able to speak to him. We have to look at the duration of that, but you're passing time fairly, on pace. Where you should be. It only took you a couple of hours to go through the Cobalt Layer, and we'll see where you go next. So it's hard to believe
I've
this is
decided
only.
I need to carry with me a bramble so I can throw it out there and use it for entangle.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good idea. Well, it's the next time you're out in the area, out in the wilderness area, before you go into your next, cave complex or anything like that, you could always grab something to give you that.
That's my plan.
Yeah.
Could she like grab a bag of seeds? Would that work? Or would they have to already be?
No, they have to be plants, but she can cast 2 spells to get to that one. So yeah, she can
plant growth
cause
and then
plant
entangle.
growth and then entangle.
Okay.
Just like you saw the druid had cast a plant growth and then a their version of travel through, like a teleport through plant, from one known set of plants to another. So druids have very interesting spell combinations that work really well together.
With how early a druid gets higher level spells.
Yes, they do get them faster, and like I said, they're interesting because they do work well together. So you have various spell combinations that, if you're sitting there and really thinking about them and saying, well, I really want to do this, but I need to do this as a setup spell first in order to be able to do that, and they work great. I think probably better than a magic user in that sense. They're just more thematic, to do that.
Nature is a proper theme.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to wrap up our little talk about our most recent 2 sessions. So I'll bring back the initial banner here. So this was our AD&D first edition Greyhawk campaign, season 2, sessions 26 and 27. We didn't talk so much about 26 because 26 was just leveling up, and it was more of a learn a little bit about the campaign and where that's kind of going, some of the timeline of the main campaign that the group was a little bit removed from because you were handling a couple of side quests during that time, and in this campaign the main story, if you want to call it that, of the campaign still continues to move on its own timeline. And when the players choose to interact with it, that's when they can affect that timeline in some way. If they choose to ignore it, well, the timeline just keeps on going, and it will follow its own course as time goes. And the way it's designed is that they can bounce back and forth into it, out of it, and have that kind of flexibility, that kind of sandbox element to it. But there's always consequences to either ignoring things or engaging things in the wrong, sequence or the wrong time, or engaging in things that, and it could also be positive too. Your engagement could be more effective than even I was anticipating, and then that will affect the overall timeline as well. So in a positive way. All right. So once again, thanks everybody for joining in, and I think I prefer this kind of format for the recaps rather than just me making a video and talking about what's going on. So So whether it's, one of you, all 8 of you, or any number in between, I think I'd rather continue doing this. Plus, it gives people a chance to come in and talk to a real campaign of AD&D First Edition. I don't think anybody else is doing what we're doing. Certainly not like this, where they're actually seeing like, no, this is an actual campaign that's taking place. It's live, or as live as our recaps are certainly
and
live.
it's more than 5 sessions.
Yes,
we
yeah,
campaign.
it's an actual 27 session campaign so far, 29 if we include the 2 sessions. So yeah, it's a long sustained campaign, and intended to go much longer. And
it's a great way of following a long-term campaign without having to make a sanity check.
Yes, that's true. Yeah,
watching. I mean, there were a couple of long-term campaigns that I had watched where you're watching them as they play the game, and after like the 5th or 6th one, I'm just like, I'm done.
Yeah, yeah. No, these tend to be shorter too. So I think you get more from a recap and actually hearing the players talk about, what was going on than you do from actually watching it. I find it too. I think it's very difficult to sit there and watch 3 hours to, watch somebody play the game. It's like, if I have 3 hours to sit there and watch somebody playing a game, I'm going to run a game. That's a more valuable use of my 3 hours than it is. Even if I'm running a one shot, I'd rather run a one shot than watch somebody else play a game. It doesn't make sense to me. But hey, they have more viewers than I do. But that just is what it is. So but hopefully this catches on, and I am hopeful that other people in the OSR and other people playing the older editions of Dungeons and Dragons actually kind of do the same thing. I'd love to hear their roundtable discussions about their campaign as they're going on. So hopefully it catches on and other people start doing it too, because I think it is a great way to signal boost AD&D First Edition or any of the older editions that players are playing. All right, so we're going to wrap this up. Thanks everybody for joining. Thanks for the comments. Let's do real quick last 2 comments. We have Clarence. Let's see. Thanks everyone. Well done. Yes, thank you, Clarence, for stopping in. And we have J-Man. Classic DD is just badass. Yes, it is. Absolutely. There's, as we said earlier on, there's no editions like TSR editions.
Well, looks like we're picking up a great time to quit out. My earbuds are about to run out of battery, so if I drop out, you'll know why.
All right, everybody. Once again, thanks for joining. Thanks for the audience coming in, and everybody have a great night. And I will see you all. Well, I'll see you during the week, but then we'll certainly be back for Monday night's game.
Back for Monday.
Yeah. All right.
Looking forward.
All right. Take care, everyone. Have a good night.